All right, guys, today's video, we're going to talk about the JP Endbell tweaking tool. So get a lot of questions about tweaking end bells, when to do that, what does it mean, how to do it, why do I need it, why can't I just run extra springs, blah, blah, blah. There's literally, it could be a year's worth of blabbering that would probably leave you more confused than you are now. So, but we do offer the end bell in a couple of different options, but you also, this works on the Tomy Super G Plus end bell, which I can grab one of those cars right here. So everybody is familiar with the Tomy Super G Plus. So this end bell, that's the original end bell. And if you have one of those and you want to get more power out of it, you can tweak it, all of that fun stuff. So, but John Pileggi, and if I butchered your last name, I apologize, but John Pileggi, or JP as we'll reference him throughout the rest of this video, he makes this little device here, which you put the end bell in and you can essentially tweak it to a moderate amount or a maximum amount, okay? And this, he probably made these, I don't know, probably 4 years ago, maybe even longer. I'm not 100% sure, but we used to do all of this by hand with a tricky screwdriver that looks like this, which I just basically took a Dremel tool and spliced down the middle. I still use this a ton, especially if I want something that's different than what these tools will achieve. The ones that you have, if you have one of these, it could have a blue knob. It just depends on what color filament that he has, but they are the same. And then we're just gonna kind of go over what to expect here. So if you look at the end bell here, and I'm gonna actually throw on my glasses just to show better, but you have both brushes here, okay? And you can see that the brushes are not centered up perfectly with each other. So they are what I call overlap, okay? And that's how much of the brush is offset. And so I have these two blocks here, and these two blocks, we're gonna use these just as an easy visual identifier to demonstrate what we're gonna achieve today. So you can see how we have the brush hanging a little bit off of this side and then the other one's hanging off that side, which is just like this. So when you tweak these, you're not only changing the overlap, okay, which changes the timing, but if you want to look at this right here, this would be changing the brush timing, because you got to remember that when these things open up and your commutators inside of there, that does change the location of the brush. The other thing too is if you rotate these, that's also what you're doing when you're tweaking it. So and then the third thing when you tweak it is you're increasing spring tension, which with the new V4 end bell, or sorry, Gen 4 end bell, you can add springs. Just be really careful if you do that, because you can overspring it really easy. If you put too much brush spring to it, you're literally just pushing these on the commutator, which I guess we could use this as our commutator here. So that, imagine this is your commutator. The harder these push onto this, the more friction that creates, which also generates heat. So there is a fine balance between how much brush tension and is too much and how much is not enough. So if your comm is out of round where it's spinning like this, then these are gonna be bouncing around quite a bit, creating a lot of heat. And from that, you might benefit a little bit from higher brush tension. It might give you a little bit more performance, but that's just a Band-Aid for a commutator that's out of round. That's why when you buy a balanced arm, it's gonna have a trued comm. Polishing the comm, doing that kind of stuff, you know, putting it in a drill and turning it from being oxidized to being shiny, that's not fixing this, okay? All you're doing is putting friggin' toothpaste on a penny. It's still a penny, okay? Like, no matter how much you polish that thing, it's still a penny. So, does need to be trued, but The other thing is timing. You can, if you're like way out here like this, like if you have your brushes set up like that, you're gonna end up with a funky wear pattern on them, and you could go too far to the point where you've actually hindered power. So something that we do with these tools, and something I've been working on recently with JP, is when you tweak in moderate, that's going to give you a little bit more tweak than what is stock. So if we put these guys back to stock, we'll say stock overlaps right there. And if we go moderate, you might be right there, okay? Definitely a performance increase, not too far. And then when you go maximum, you're gonna get more to around 50% overlap, which the earlier gauges, you could go way beyond that to the point where the brushes actually would be beyond each other, or they would be just at the tips. The downside to that is that you can break the tips off the brushes, and if you do that, then they will essentially do this. And you know, they're not gonna do that when it's installed, because you're gonna use a brush spreader and you're gonna put the COM in there, but that's just not ideal. You wanna be consistent. So we've worked on this to where if you do run one at max, and we'll start by doing one at moderate, but if you do run one to max, you shouldn't be over tweaking it. And the reason that we did that is so that if you want to notch this or this nub to get a little bit more out of it, once you're comfortable with using this, once you know what the results are, and once you want to get a little bit more, or you want to see what that limit is, you can definitely mod it. It's much easier to get comfortable with it, then remove that amount and learn like, okay, I know what I'm doing now. I can't just crank it down like you can right now. Versus before, where if you went all the way, you know, you would have brush problems. I don't want someone, you know, destroying an end bell and telling me, hey, I used that tool that I bought from you and I want a new end bell, because you're not going to get it. Okay, you shouldn't have went too far. But this guy has 2 pins in there. Okay, load the end bell. I usually will mark this on one side, so I have a T there for top. That's where I always put the logo of the end bell. If you're using a Tomy end bell, it does have a little Mabuchi logo on it, which is on there. I'm not going to show it to you because, I mean,
it's tiny.
It's tiny, and more than likely you're going to use a Viper end bell. But you go ahead and set this in there like so, and then I usually keep everything as flat and firm as possible, and I usually will bump it on the stop a couple of times, okay? So you can see that the end bell is in there, and you can see we have a little bit more brush overlap like I was talking about. So now what we'll do is we'll pull this out, load it up the same way, and you could rotate the end bell 180 and do it again, and that would make sure that, you know, if there was any like variance in the end bell housing, which there really isn't going to be more than like tenths, but you could have a little bit of variance in the brush arms. There could also be a little bit of variance in the tool itself, because these pins are installed by hand, but I like to just keep it top to top. And now we're going to go to our max setting. Okay, so we're at max. If you ever do this and you hear a click noise, more than likely what that is when this is bending, these brushes are being pushed against each other really hard. And if you hear a click, usually it's one of these brushes breaking. You break the corner, and when you break the corner, it's like a, you know, if you've ever opened a gate in a windstorm and the thing blows open, that's essentially what's happening here, and this thing pops over and it overbends it, okay? I don't know if I can get either of these to do that today, but I'm gonna try to make one do that, and if I can't, then I'll just overbend one by hand to show you how to get it back to a stock point, okay? But we're in max. We're gonna go a couple times, and we're gonna pull this guy out. Okay, and now you can see that we're closer to about 50% overlap. Something else to look at too, and this is how I check brush tension on these guys, is I will relieve pressure from this bottom one, but I'm actually wanting to see how much this other one moves, okay? So see how it only moved about, I don't know, a 1/16 of an inch? That means that you can definitely increase spring pressure. So this is tweaking it, but if you want to increase spring pressure, what you need to do, and this is tricky, but I like to take a flat like this. You'll put it in there all the way up against the edge over here, and I'm just going to come up just a smidge, and then we're going to recheck it. Okay, so we got about twice the movement out of there now, so we have about twice the spring pressure. And I know you're going to ask me, well, what's the right spring pressure? The right spring pressure is whatever that car wants. There's no right answer for that. There's definitely too little spring pressure, it's not going to have any power. Too high of spring pressure, it's going to have okay power. It's going to draw a lot of amperage, more than it should, and it's going to run hot. So if you go over, you know, you want to relieve that. And if you have to relieve it, basically you're just going to pull these down, you know, and I try to make sure that if you ever are doing spring pressure, you want to try to get it adjusted as close to the pivot point as possible up here. If you wanted max spring pressure and you made yourself a fork like this, you actually can put it over like this, and I'll twist it. And sometimes doing this, it actually takes a little bit of the tweak away. But now I'm trying to keep my fingers out of the way so that you guys can see this. Now you can see that thing is like moving a ton, okay? So that would be like the tweak I would use on a Neo car or something really hot, you know, 34 gauge, 33 gauge, something like that. This tool is not going to do that for you. So you still will have to do that if that's what you want. But I can tell you that these tools will create a consistent tweak that will give you very, very consistent results time and time and time again. So if you buy X armature, X Endbell, tweak it to max or whatever you decide to on this thing, it will do that every single time. Which is nice, and that's what we really use these tools for. So with our production stuff, we use this on all of them. If I'm building a custom car or like a Neo car like that car, I probably will just do it by hand, which you just have to, the more you do, the more you'll learn about it, and the better you'll get. This one here that we just did, I am going to over tweak it real quick. Okay, so I'll show you what over tweak looks like. Okay, so that thing is all jacked up. There's no symmetry here, nothing symmetrical. We broke the tips off of the brushes. You know, it's pretty jacked up, okay? So what you want to do if that happens is get yourself, and if you watch my videos, you'll always see me using the smooth jawed needle nose. You'll want to take a pair of these, and let's see, we're going to go right where the bend is, okay, and we're going to just pinch it, and we're going to flatten all that stuff back out, okay? So now, and this obviously isn't ideal. I mean, if you're trying to restore something or just keep an end bell from going down the drain, definitely want to do this. If you're working on a hardcore race motor, you screw one up, you might just grab another one. I know it's expensive, and I know you're guys going to say, well, that's easy for you to say, you got a bunch of them. It's true, but I also too am building them for you, and if that happens, I'm going to give you a new one, okay? And you deserve a new one as well. So like, if you're just building cars, getting them on the track, or like wanting to upgrade this guy, this is totally fine for that. So we'll go back to our moderate setting, spin it around, go to our max setting, oops, drop it, and then we'll look at it, and you can see, aside from it missing those corners, it's back to a happy spot, okay? and we've been able to restore it. Now it's probably going to still have a lot more spring tension than it would have normally coming out of here, but that thing is perfectly fine to still use. And those brush arms, I mean, you could probably do that a few times before eventually that material that they're made out of, like if you keep bending it back and forth, it's just like any metal. Do that enough times and it's just gonna break. Especially something this thin, but you can do that a few times and get away with it. I like to always do moderate first and then go to max, but that particular time I went straight to max. We're right back to where we started, right? Or we're back to where we were with the max. So I've fixed those a few times. While we're on the topic, if you guys really wanted to do something, and if you really wanted to play around with these things, these little spots over here, okay, these are called stake marks. You can take an X-Acto blade. I don't know if Sam can catch this, but if you cut this off, okay, you cut that off where it's staked. We're going to do both sides. I'm trying to do this so that you guys can see it. So we're going to just cut that off. Don't be afraid of this stuff, guys. Okay? This is your hobby. Don't be afraid to tear into stuff. So we cut those off. And you're like, okay, big deal. Now what? Now, if you take something and you can see right here where this is dropped down in there, what I'll do is you can pop that up, okay? And then I'm gonna put, and you can actually do it with an X-Acto blade. So I'm gonna put this blade underneath here, put my thumb on it, and I'm gonna pull it out. So see that big tab? That tab goes in to the end bell, okay? That's your bunny ear portion right there. Let's get that folded over, okay? And then this part that's bent over is your brush arm. Now, that is no different at this point with that bent over. It's no different than a can motor that came in like the Tomy SRT, the Tomy Turbo, lately the Super 7, the Bulldog. They all have that tab, exact same brush arm, okay guys? So you can pop this guy up and bend it over like that, okay? And then I'm just gonna push it with my fingernail, and voila. Viola, isn't that how you spell that? There it is, okay? Whole brush arms out of there. Okay, and you might be thinking, well, why would I do that? Well, if you want to play around with it, you can, okay? If this has a ball bearing in it and let's say you don't want to take it out and you screwed up a brush arm, you can get another brush arm. I have these. We don't sell them on the site, but I do have them available if you absolutely need one. I'm not selling them to guys that are filling up their tackle boxes with them. It's literally for like an emergency only, but you can do that. And something else that you can do if you're just wanting to learn, I mean, if you spend 10 bucks on one of these things to just learn this, really, really inexpensive to figure that out. But what you can do also is take a Dremel tool and you can carve all of this area out so that you can see inside of there and you can really see what's going on, okay? But if you're gonna reassemble this, super easy, literally. See, I'll do it this way. So you're just reversing what you did here, which, okay, so I can't just push that all the way down because you can see my other brush arm is in the way. So you do have to open that up. Let's see if I can do this here. You want to get it started before, there we go. And now I'll take this same screwdriver. This thing, I love this thing with the split in there. Drop it down in there. This part, I can put this in there. Bend that back over. And usually when I bend it over, I will bend it left or right so that it stays underneath there. And then this next part is a little bit tricky because you do want to put the tang into the end bell first, like so, okay? And then this part, you want to drop it down in there as straight as possible. So I'm gonna try to do this one here. Okay, so that's registered in there. And I need to push my tang a little bit, drop that, push my tang, and then now I'm gonna just drop it all the way in there, okay? Now that's locked in, and if you want to on these things, you can actually bend those out like that. And I've even seen guys that solder them right here. All that's legal. Nothing wrong with doing any of that stuff to any end bell for any organization. And even these guys, if you're worried about those, once you bend this thing around that and it's trapped in there, it can't go anywhere. So even though that's not staked anymore, can't go anywhere. Drop a super glue on there if you want to. You could absolutely do that as well. So that's just kind of, I mean, that's a little more in depth than I originally thought that we would do in this video, but I wanted to show you that that end bell started out fresh, like so. We tweaked it, we over tweaked it, we jacked it up, we fixed it, we did all kinds of stuff. We took it apart, all of that stuff we did. So you could do that too. I know I probably made it look easy, and that's probably because I've literally done 50,000 of these freaking things, probably more than that. I used to put a lot of these together by hand too. Now I only typically do that on full-blown race stuff. But you can play around with brushes. You can, when you take that thing apart, you can trim brushes, you can drill brushes, you can, you know, put different brushes in there if you want to. I've put different brushes in there. I've done all kinds of stuff. That's super deep off the deep end, and if there was speed secrets by doing that, it would just be a standard product, because that's typically what we do. That's literally how the V1 evolved from this. All the little tricks and tips and things and that, so I just engineered them into the V1, and we improved that just recently with the V3. So same thing on these. If you want to tinker, you can, but the package that we sell, it is one of the best packages that you can get. You know, you don't have to go tearing apart a bunch of motors and tearing apart a bunch of stuff. You can just buy an end bell, tweak it, and put it in there. I will give you a sneak peek of a tool that we're working on right now. So this is a break-in tool, so it has a pilot shaft on it. And while we're on this topic, I'll give you guys, how long are we right now?
23 minutes.
Oh yeah, we're good. So if you stuck around to watch the rest of this, then you'll see this part. But you can see that's in there, and this is exactly the same size as the comm, okay? And so what you do is you can spin it in a drill, spin it however you want. You wanted to make sure that you're pushing it, keeping it square against the shoulder. But we're working on different grits of these right now so that we can find whatever's optimal. This one's a little aggressive, but if you look inside of there, now you can see the brushes have been radiused per the comm, and now you want to be really gentle opening and closing this. You can see, hopefully on this one, that there is a little bit of a triangle on the backside back here that's not cut yet. That would be what I would call about 90% break-in, and that's typically what I would pre-seat brushes to before I even run it up there, and then I usually run it on my box at 5 volts for 30 minutes or so. You can go longer if you want, but that is a fast track to not running the car with the brushes not broken in. So really cool tool. It's probably going to be a one-time purchase because it is diamond and it's cutting carbon, which is completely, I mean, as far as hardness goes, they might be the same material, but as far as hardness goes, totally opposite ends of the spectrum. But that's also going to be a great tool because every time you tweak or move your brushes, that center point where the commutator spins inside of the brush, it changes. So if you tweak it, you run the car, everything's good, but you want a little bit more power, you tweak it more, you are going to have to reseat those brushes or run the car long enough to break it back in for that new tweak. So don't just tweak it and expect it to work better right off the bat. You do need to make sure that it's broken in. But hopefully that's it. I mean, I thought I was going to go through more Endbells, but we didn't, luckily, and that's hopefully going to give you guys confidence too that you don't need to go through a bunch of Endbells. Hopefully this block setup made sense for you guys. You know, you can play around with different locations. I mean, I usually don't go beyond something like that and the twist, but also too, when you start twisting that stuff, you can also rotate the Endbell around in the car, and it is possible to go too far. So if you feel like you went too far or you feel like the power has nosed off, try to go neutral on the location of the Endbell timing or go retarded and see if it picks up. And if it does, then that means that you might have went a little bit too far. On the next one, don't go quite as far. That way you have a good, 3 settings on your Endbell timing with the Endbell in the car. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video. A lot to unpack. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions, and we'll do our best to jump in there and answer them. One thing I haven't been doing is if the video answers a question, I haven't been answering it, because a lot of times guys will watch the first 5 minutes and ask a question that's answered later in the video. So feel like your question's not getting answered, you might want to watch the whole video and then get back to me on that. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. We'll see you on the next one.